Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley. Thanks for joining me for Satur-YAY, where we're celebrating the weekend by getting our craft on. Today we're going to take a look at the Avery Elle Liquid Watercolors, and I'm going to show you how to make some super easy watercolor backgrounds that are not intimidating at all. You can see I have all of the Avery Elle Liquid Watercolors laid out here for you to see. They come in 10 colors. There's a beautiful rainbow assortment of colors. Each of the colors is listed here on the side of the bottle. Now these bottles are much like a re-inker bottle. They are plastic, so you won't break them in your craft room. And you can see the little dropper tip that's on the end of them, making them really easy to kind of drop out the amount of watercolor that you need. Now, every time you use these, you want to shake them up really good, get all the pigment mixed into the carrier fluid that's in there. And the thing that I love about these is that they're already ready to go. You don't have to water them down, but you can water them down. Now, you can pick them up from a palette like I have here on my right side, or you can pick them up from an acrylic block. Any way that you use them is absolutely fine. Now for my paper today, I am going to be using the Ranger watercolor cardstock. This is a nice bright white watercolor cardstock that has both a smooth and a rough side. So when you are stamping, I definitely recommend using the smoother side to stamp your images. Now for my stamped images today, I'm going to be using the Avery Elle Splash stamp set. This is so adorable. I've been dying to use it. And I'm going to stamp them in some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. This is a permanent pigment ink. It's permanent once it's dry, so that makes it perfect for watercoloring. Now I took those images and I set them aside and allowed them to dry while I worked on some watercolor backgrounds. And you can see here I am taping just a couple of these pieces of the watercolor cardstock onto a cutting board here. This is just a surface to kind of keep it flat as I paint. And then I decided I should probably swatch these before I get started. So you can see I've just added a little line of water onto my paper, and then I'm going to go in with a damp brush and just kind of blend it out so that you can see it at its most intense and as it gets lighter. Now some of these didn't stay intense because I added too much water at the top where I added the color. But this will give you a good idea of the range of colors that these watercolors come in. And I have to say, as I was playing with these, I was so pleased with the colors. So starting at the top, that's cherry, and then I have mimosa, fizz, celery, lemongrass, meant to be, aquamarine, sea glass, sapphire, and sugar plum purple. I think that's what it's called. But that is a good look at all of the colors, and you can see the beautiful range. I love that they're kind of just bright on-trend colors. Now for my first really easy watercolor background, I'm going to do something that I'm dubbing drop watercolor. Know what else to call it. I've wet the surface of my watercolor cardstock and I'm just taking these little bottles and dropping some of the color on there. And you can see these liquid watercolors really move in that water. Now, if I want to, I can take a damp brush and kind of move some of these colors around, kind of blend them. I am using 3 different colors here. This is meant to be aquamarine and sapphire. That really intense dark true blue is the sapphire. That more green look is the meant to be. And then the other kind of in-between tealy color is the aquamarine. So you can see this does not take an artist. This is simply taking these liquid watercolors and dropping them onto the surface. Now, if I want more intense color in certain areas, I'm going to drop a few more drops in there. And when I was done playing with these watercolors, I had plenty left. So this is not wasting it, but you can also pick these watercolors up from a palette or a block, which I'm going to show you here shortly. Now, along those same lines, I'm going to create lines of water onto my watercolor cardstock using a wide flat brush, and then I'm just going to drop the color in once again, but this is going to give me a striped background. So for the first color, I use the aquamarine. This is the lemongrass, and for the third color, I'm going to be using the cherry watercolor. Now, this made a really cool background. It didn't take me long at all. And you can see I'm just letting that watercolor go with the flow, literally. I'm not trying to mess with it too much. I'm just letting it do its thing. No, I really liked that, so I created another background just like it. Only this time, I flipped it over to the smoother side of the watercolor cardstock, and you're going to see that I get a lot more travel with this version because there's not that texture to kind of grab the water and the watercolor. So it kind of ran off the edge, which I'm totally okay with. This is watercolor, so it is going to be free and it is going to move. And especially since these are already in a liquid form, they're not starting out as like a solid or a creamy base. These really move. And I think that you can see that here as I create this heart. Now I'm doing the same thing. All I did was paint my water in the shape of a heart instead of those stripes. And now I'm just dropping in several colors. I'm allowing them to move. I'm allowing them to blend together. And then if there's some places where it's getting muddy, I'm just going to take a clean, dry cloth and just kind of sop up some of that water and some of that color. And then I'm going to set them aside and I'm going to leave them alone and let them dry. And in the end, these turned out really great. Now, as I mentioned before, you can absolutely pick these up from a palette or an acrylic block, which is what I'm going to do here. So I've dropped down some of my colors onto this acrylic block, and then I'm just using a damp paintbrush to paint these into stripes onto a dry piece of watercolor cardstock. So this would be a wet to dry technique. And you can see the really beautiful blend that I got. Now, without adding any more color to my block, I'm going to create another background that's just like it. But because I had already grabbed those colors with a kind of damp brush before, there was a little bit of water already in them. So I'm getting a much softer color this time. Once again, I just want to state these are really easy. It does not take an artist or a genius to do this. I think that these liquid watercolors are great for a beginner because they are very just easy to work with. They're not intimidating, and the colors are absolutely beautiful. So for this background, I'm kind of doing the same thing. And when I want the colors to kind of blend together a little bit more, I'm just going over it with a damp brush and allowing that water to bring the two colors together. So here's a look at all of the watercolor backdrops that I created. And now I'm going to go into coloring my images for these cards. And once again, I've just dropped some of that color onto an acrylic block. And now I'm using my Nuvo shimmer pen to kind of watercolor these images. Now I'm going for a really loose watercolored look here. I'm not going for perfection. And that helps me to do two things. It helps me to kind of relax a little bit because I'm not striving for perfection. And it helps me color these images much more quickly. Now, as the colors dry, and you can see I'm hitting it with a heat tool here to speed that along. If you want to intensify the colors, you can add another layer of color over your dried watercolor to get it more intense in some certain spots. So now I've taken the coordinating dies and I've cut out these little floaty images. Are they not the cutest? I mean, this is like my dream vacation here. The sky is beautiful. It's in a rainbow. There are unicorn floaties in the water. And I mean, what could be more perfect than that, right? So I'm just taking a variety of these images and I'm adding foam adhesive to the back and I'm adhering them onto my backdrop in different configurations. So this one is going to be all of the pool floaties here. It's the flamingo, the swan, and the unicorn. On the other ones, I'm going to take those two little girls and I'm going to have them floating on the different types of floaties, which is the pineapple floaty, and then there's just the round floaty, and then there's the donut floaty as well. And I don't know if floaty is like the right term, but it's what I'm using for them. So now it's time to add some sentiments to my cards, and I didn't plan this out, so I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. And I'm going to add this, I hope your birthday is a splash sentiment to my card front, but I'm not sure exactly where I want it. So you can see I brought in a piece of acetate and I put it over my card front here and I'm stamping onto the acetate, and that helps me kind of see where my image is going to land, and I can look at it and see if I want to adjust it or change anything. I can also pick up the acetate and try this sentiment out in different areas on my card front. So if you're kind of struggling with where to place your sentiment, you can absolutely stamp it onto a piece of acetate. I just use the VersaFine Clear ink, which is what I'm using for the sentiments on the card front anyway. And then when I was done with it, I just wiped it clean with a baby wipe. So you can see I've also stamped this keep calm and float on sentiment onto my acetate, and I'm trying to figure out where I want it on this other card as well. And when I settle on a spot, I'll stick that into my MISTI, I'll mount my stamp exactly where I want it, ink it up with that VersaFine Clair ink, and then stamp it onto my card front. And I'm using the MISTI here just in case I don't get a great impression on this textured watercolor cardstock. So now I've taken all my card fronts and I've adhered them with some foam adhesive onto kind of a pool colored card base, and I'm going to embellish my cards. I'm starting out with some sparkling clear sequins, and I'm adding those on with some of the collage medium in the matte finish. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the gold stickles to the unicorn's horn. And then I'll go back in with my tonic shimmer pen and add a little more shimmer to some of these images. So that completes my cards for today and gives you a really good look at these liquid watercolors from Avery Elle. I think that these are a great way to kind of get your feet wet, so to speak, in the watercolor world. They are ready to go right out of the bottle, and they are available in some really beautiful colors. And I just think that they make kind of one of those grab and go, really easy, no-brainer watercolor projects. I don't have to think about how much I need to dilute them. They're just ready to go for me. And if you prefer, you can also use just like a water brush instead of a standard paintbrush with a container of water. Use whatever you feel comfortable with. So there you have it, a few ways to make some really easy watercolor backgrounds with the Avery Elle Liquid Watercolors, and also some fun cards featuring that adorable Avery Elle Splash stamp set, which I just love. This has gone to my favorites for sure. As always, I will have links to the featured supplies in the description at YouTube, but head on over to the Coordinating Classroom blog post because over there I'll have more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies for you. Thanks for stopping by and spending time with me today on this beautiful Satur-YAY. I hope you enjoy your day and you celebrate the weekend by getting your craft on. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Once again, thanks for stopping by and thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe to our channel, be sure to hit that button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.